Okay, welcome to the next episode of the Path Less Chosen pod, the podcast showing you the careers they don't teach you about in school. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Sol.
And today's guest is Gemma Stevenson. So in short, her job is a spinal medical sales rep, which, I'm not really sure exactly what it means. So I'm hoping she's going to explain, but it basically means she has a lot to do with surgery and surgeons, and she sells them equipment and devices, which are then going to be used in surgery, things like nails, screws, and cages that go into people's spines and stuff like that. So I'm fascinated to hear about it.
Yeah, I mean, to unpick what she does, I think, first of all, the medical aspect of it, no idea about that. And then also the sales aspect, very interested to learn more about how the hell she's navigated through that and how you go from a university student on a pretty normal path to speaking to surgeons and trying to sell them stuff.
Definitely. Yeah, I think one thing to note as well is that she's the youngest rep that works for her company. So for her to be doing it is pretty impressive straight out of university. Well, welcome, Gemma, to the Path Less Chosen pod. Really interested to hear about what exactly it is you do. So I think the first point of call is to explain literally what is a medical sales rep.
So, well, it's good to be here. But yeah, so medical sales reps, it depends what you're in. So I'm in devices and I'm specifically in spinal devices. So say you were doing something like completely different. So you're doing shoulders, knees, hips, it would be slightly different. No area is completely the same. Basically everything you see in a hospital has been sold by a medical sales rep, like down to beds, lights, plasters, like needles, everything has been sold by a medical sales rep, which is funny because some people have been like, oh, you work in an unethical career, like you're like exploiting people. And I'm like, there'd be no hospitals without us. So it's like, that's fine. There's two sides of my job. So there's the side that's like the sales side, which is kind of less of it, to be honest. A lot of this job is like relationship building. So you're not necessarily selling to people. Like I feel like people get the misconception that we're walking up to surgeons and being like, this is why you should use our product. And like, it's so much better than this one. It's not quite like that. It's very much a lot of the time, sometimes you're walking to a hospital. Will you see a surgeon? No, like they don't want to see you. Like it's very much building relationships with the whole theatre team, sometimes before you even get in front of a surgeon, which is like just being stonewalled. And then once you've like built that relationship, then it's like, oh, maybe they'll start using your products, maybe not, but like that's kind of that side. But the main part of my job is in theatre. So I get told about cases, surgeons want to use our kit for it, and then it's my job to know what they want to use. So I need to find out like screw sizes, cage sizes, like which bone graft do they want, basically everything they could possibly need. And half the time I kind of have to guess because they don't tell me specifically what they want. I just have to know the surgery off by heart. So I have to know what they want. Then once that's all done, I have to book that in, check and make sure all of the kits arrived, all the instruments are correct. So I go through before every case and I check all of the instruments, and so I know what's there, because once it's sterilized, you can't see in the set. So you have to just check everything's there. Like, for example, what if the kit arrives and there's only one screwdriver? There's two surgeons, how are they going to put in a screw each side? Then on the day of the case, it's like making sure everything's been sterilized, something's been pat tested, and then it's being in the surgery and teaching the scrub nurse how to use the sets beforehand, because a lot of the time in the NHS especially, they'll rotate the staff. So the scrub nurse you have for this case may have never been in spine at all, or they've never seen your sets before because the surgeons use multiple different sets. So you have to be there and be able to talk them through the entire operation and all of the instruments they need before the surgery. And then once you're in the surgery, it's not just that, you then have to basically point out across the sets what they need when they need it before the surgeon needs it. Because otherwise you end up having the surgeon looking at me and going like, Gemma, I need this, where is it? And then having to rush and then like find it for them. So you're supposed to know like the head when things like are happening. And then if the surgeon has any issues, then you have to be able to talk them through what the issue is. Like, for example, with a retractor, and it's the first time they've used it, and they're like shouting at me being like, Gemma, how does this work? And I'm like, okay, calm down. You need this screwdriver, which is being given to you, and then this will pull back like the anterior blade or whatever.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I doubt you were an expert in that when you were 16, 17, 18. No. So connect up the dots for me. Like, how did you go from 16, 17, 18 and then move into a sales role in medical technology? How does that come about?
So we'll start maybe at like 15. I wanted to do medicine. Like that was what I wanted to do. And that was the career path. I was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. So picked all my A levels. I did like maths, chemistry, biology, geography. And I was like, okay, great. We're on the way. And then that didn't happen. There's reasons behind it, and it didn't. Yeah, so that didn't happen. Didn't get the A levels that I needed, and then I wanted to do cosmetic science at one point because I had like a stupid amount of makeup. Like, yeah, I'm going to be a cosmetic scientist, and if I'm not going to med school, then I'll go develop cosmetics and do all that and chemistry. And I was like, yeah, perfect. And my biology teacher, like, I'd written all my personal statements. I had 3 offers. My teacher looked at me. She was like, "You excited to go?" And I was like, "No, yeah, just not really that excited." And she was like, "You're doing the wrong degree." So she basically was like, "Have you considered doing biomedical science? Like, you're really good at biology, and like you wanted to do medicine, so why not do that?" I rewrote my personal statement in 48 hours, rejected all of my offers, and reapplied for unis I'd never been to. I got an unconditional for Portsmouth, and with the way my grades are at the time, I was like, I'm not going to gamble anymore. Like, you would just stick with the unconditional. And then did biomed 3 years, and then I did a master's in medical biotechnology as well.
And then straight out of that, like, were you having chats about sales? From my perspective, sales is still not the obvious, or even like a route that anyone does for that. But I could be wrong.
I was kind of in 2 minds to begin with. I was in the neuro-oncology research labs at uni. I did research projects in my 3rd year and my final year, and I was there over the whole summer, like doing that. And they wanted me to stay on to do a PhD, and there was discussion being like, "Do you want to stay here and do this?" And I was like, "No, I don't think I can deal with this. I'm far too sociable. Like, I just don't think a lab environment is for me." Like, I loved it, and I loved the PhD students I worked with. But for me, I'm so sociable and chatty. I just wouldn't thrive in a lab environment for the next 4 years. So I was like, oh, well, what can I do? And there was the option of like doing physician's associate. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. At this point, I'd moved on from being a doctor or anything like that. And I was like, oh, well, I could do medical sales. But I didn't really know much about it. But I was like, that seems like something I'd be good at. Like, in terms of sales wise, I was like very much a people person. I was like, I've got the medical background. I was like, oh, we'll go for that.
How did you hear about medical sales being a thing? Because I think one of the big things with the pod is like, we often speak to people where it's careers that I didn't even hear existed when we were at school.
Even going into my job interview for this job, I had no idea. It was just like, oh, medical stuff and sales. I was like, okay. Like, I didn't know really anyone in it. Like, I know no one who does my job. Medical sales is such a broad term that no 2 departments are really the same. So it was never mentioned to me at uni. It was never like, here's a career option that you could do. It was just something that I'd like Googled, and I was like, I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but one thing I would say to anyone applying for medical sales is to update your LinkedIn for recruiters and tailor it towards medical sales. I didn't even apply for this job that I got recruited into it through LinkedIn. You know, on LinkedIn, where you have like, you're open to work and you can pick which roles you're interested in. Like, having that updated towards medical sales is really important. So having all of it updated, so recent photos, and having it targeted to medical sales and having your achievements is the best way I found. And how I tell people when they ask me how to get into it is 100% make sure your LinkedIn is up to date.
Like, in a sentence, what do you say you do? And then what's the best thing? Why do you love it? Why should people get into it? Why should people update their LinkedIn?
Oh, in a sentence is so difficult because we do so much. I would say that like no 2 days are ever the same. That's the reason that if you don't want a desk job and you don't want to be doing exactly the same thing every day, then this is like high stress, high functioning, chaotic. Some days I'll be doing kit checks. Some days I'll be at conferences. Obviously conferences like aren't as common, but conferences, then you'll stood at like a stand, and then you have like work dinners, which are like sponsored events, but there has to be like talks and things going on at those. And then there's lots of driving. like a stupid amount of driving. But surgery days are the best. You can have back-to-back surgery some days. You can have sales work other days where you're cold calling hospitals, driving around, covering cases for other people. I've been all over the country with this job, covering cases or shadowing people. It's just like, there's literally no way you can explain. If you were like, oh, what are you doing tomorrow? I'd be like, I don't know. Morning, but apart from that, I was like, something could happen. I could need to take kit across the country. I could need to cover a case. It's really difficult to plan a week. And that's one thing I will say is it's extremely difficult to have a social plan that's like structured as well.
So social side, but what else do you face that's a bit of a challenge?
So sometimes it can be extremely long working days. So for example, if we have a scoliosis case, that can be like an all-day thing. If a list says it starts at 8 a.m, it never starts at 8 a.m. That's ever. So I can still be at the hospital for 8 a.m. and it's not going to start then. It could start any time between like 9 and midday, I would say, depending where you are. So I think the long days, like there's been like 12, 14-hour days, and it is what it is. I love my job, so it's fine. But if you didn't love it, it would be a lot harder to stay in this job. Like I think it's definitely for some people and not for others.
And what skills do you need for the job?
So there's product managers, there's clinical managers, like training managers. So everyone has different skill sets, and that's where they end up going in companies, and that's the same with everywhere. I think something I've learned from my manager is you just have to like kind of go for it. And if you've got that social personality, you're with these surgeons who they worked so hard, like to be where they are. They're like consultants and everything. And they're surrounded by generally different teams each day. Like there's some consistencies, but a lot of staff rotates around in hospitals. And like you are the one consistent person that's there for all of their cases. It's like you are the person. This was told to me by a surgeon. They were like, you are in all of our cases. Like you are the one familiar face that we have across all of our surgeries. And like you want to be that person in the morning that when they see you, they're not like, oh God, not her again. You want to be that person like, oh, my rep's here. Like we can get on with everything. Like that's kind of the attitude I bring to the job. I don't know if it's the same for all other reps. Being in hospitals is hard work. All of like the nurses that are in there, I don't want to come in and nag them or just be miserable. I treat everyone the same. Like I go in and I want to be full of life and energy, because it's a breath of fresh air sometimes when they've been working really long shifts and they're on call, and you just don't want to be adding to the stress of the day.
You said like when you're at university and when the idea came to you, but you only knew vaguely about it, that you thought, okay, maybe I could be good at that because I could be good in sales. To choose the route you've gone down, you're in what's publicly perceived in surgery being quite a male-dominated industry, and you've gone into it as quite a young woman. How do you build up the confidence and the sales techniques to go in and sell to these people?
You are correct. It is an extremely male-dominated industry. Most of my time is spent with middle-aged men. Like, I'm going to be honest, that is pretty much my job. I think a culmination of like kind of all of my life experiences have kind of led me to be just kind of fine with that from like kind of a very young age. Like I've always been with like my friends' parents, or if I've been over there, like I'll quite happily have a chat with all their parents. Like that's never been anything different to me. And my dad's like in a flying club, so that is full of middle-aged men. And so it's kind of things like that. And then you won't believe this at all, you'll find this really funny. I used to have such bad anxiety when I was younger that I couldn't order for myself in restaurants. I couldn't answer the phone. I was terrified of fish and chip shops. Like I'd have a panic attack at the thought of even going into a fish and chip shop. And it was completely like, to be honest, even in like my first year of uni, and it's just completely switched. But it's very much like a fake it till you make it confidence.
It almost seems like the biggest juxtaposition to a point where you have the anxiety of that, to having to walk into a room or walk into a surgery and own the place and be the bubbliest person, as you say. So I'm interested to know, in that time when you had the anxiety, how did you come out of that place?
So this is a really good question, actually. So I had like really crippling anxiety, especially a lot when I was younger. Like I would say probably from the ages about 14, 15. And this went on and off through really bad periods until maybe I was 19. So that's a long time of like constant panic attacks. Like I remember like my dad for the first time, like I had a panic attack and he was here. Like he took me to hospital because he didn't know what was happening and I just stopped breathing. Like I was hyperventilating so much. And this would happen so regularly and my mental health was just dreadful. Like I was diagnosed with PTSD when I was 18 and this is actually wild, thinking about it, because it goes back to your previous question. I couldn't be near men. Like I basically got an E in chemistry because like my only male teacher in sixth form was my chemistry teacher, and I would have flashbacks and like panic attacks when he would come near me. And honestly, nothing to do with him. Lovely guy. I feel really bad about it now because he must have thought I had a problem with him, but I didn't. I just had a problem like being around men.
Yeah.
And like I would have to leave and I would not come back into my chemistry lessons. So I, bless his heart, he must have thought I had something against it, but I really didn't. So going from that to now what I do, it's actually quite a crazy contrast. But I think if anyone has like issues like that, it's very difficult to see the end point, like extremely difficult. Like there were definitely points when I was younger, like I didn't see anyone talking about it. So like mental health at that point was like, there was still like a huge stigma. Like you never saw any adults speaking about having been through mental health issues. So at that point, I didn't think anyone made it. Like in my head, I was like, okay, everyone who has mental health issues, no one makes it. Like in my head, that was the idea I had because no one spoke. I think it's a lot better now. Like you have people, it's an open discussion, but at the time it wasn't. And I think that was like a huge thing. Like I just didn't think it was ever going to end and it was just horrendous. And I went through so many like therapists and I would like either lie to them for a start because I didn't like them. Like I could very quickly be like, no, I don't like you. I'm just going to lie to you so I can leave. And obviously don't recommend that. But what I do recommend is finding like a good therapist for you. I think it's okay to not like them, but don't lie to them like I did, but just find a good one. Because when I did find a good one, that was like where the most progress was made. I've had two really good ones. One was in my first year of uni and the other one was during that A-level period. But yeah, like it was just, I think the main thing from that is you have to want to get better. And when people have asked before, they were like, how did you go from like it being that bad where I wouldn't go a day without crying or having a panic attack. Like it was horrendous. And like I didn't think there was going to be an end to it. Like it was just the worst period of my life. And it was like one day I woke up and I was like, this is in my own head. Like I have to consciously make an effort. Bear in mind, this was after a lot of therapy. Like I'm not saying this to be like, oh, okay, if you're depressed, just be happy, because that's not what I'm saying. But it was like after working on it for like quite a while, it was kind of a point as in like, I am the only person that's going to make this better for myself. And it was that realization that it was like every day I need to find a positive. It was like every single day that like, because in that mindset, you just think so negatively about everything. You have to break the cycle. So it's like thinking positively about literally anything, being like, oh, this thing was good today. And then at the end of it, you have like a list of all these good things that have happened that you wouldn't have even clocked because you were so in your own head. At the original time when it was really bad, when I was in secondary school before A-levels, I was like bullied. There was a lot going on. Like at that point, I had no one. Like I was so isolated. I didn't want to tell my parents what was going on either. So it was very much like I felt completely alone. And then in sixth form, it was like, it was better. I'm still really good friends with all of the girls that I was friends with them. And I love them all to death. And some of them, I don't know how they put up with me, because when I was in one of my lowest points, I was a horrible person. And I will hold my hands up and admit that I was not a nice person to be around. And like, if anyone knew me in my first year of uni, I thoroughly apologize, because I was not nice. And I hold my hands up to that. But like, I think it was very much like a kind of, it felt like a solo battle. I didn't really want to speak. I felt like a burden to people, which is why I think it was so important having like a really good therapist, because it was like, I didn't feel like a burden to her. But like, as much as it probably wasn't true of other people, they would have been like, well, of course he would have supported you through that. I felt like a burden to them because it'd gone on for so long.
How did you get to a point where you fundamentally in yourself wanted to change?
I was so tired I was so tired of being sad. I was just sick of it. I was sick of myself, and I was like, everyone else is just enjoying life or just being out there and doing it, and I was like, why can't I be happy? I was like, it was like, I think in my head I was just like, what have I done to deserve this? And it was like, well, no, Gemma, actually, this is in your own head. Like, some things you just have to get on with. Like, you have to process it yourself. Like, no one is going to do it for you. And I think that's something I've very much carried on throughout my life. Like, that is something I've massively learned from this period of my life, is no one is going to do it for you. Like, if you want something, you have to put the work in. Like, people look at me now and they'd be like, you're so happy and so full of energy. If you'd have seen me like 8-9 years ago, it's a completely different person, because I appreciate so much more in my life now. And it's about appreciating things and appreciating people. And when you're so in your own head, the only thing your world revolves around is yourself and how unhappy you are. And obviously everyone's situation is different. There are external factors for other people as well. But for me personally, it was very much all in my own head.
I think it's obviously an amazing story. And yeah, Sol mentioned, to have gone through that and now do the job is just such a massive contrast. And one thing I picked up on that was interesting, you said, is there is an element of fake it till you make it. So I wanted to go into more detail on that. What exactly do you mean by fake it till you make it? How do you do it? And do you see that as something that's going to be sustainable if you're going to be in this role for a few years? Are you happy just to take on that role as, today I'm going to be a medical sales rep, regardless of what's going on maybe away from work?
So I think fake it till you make it is kind of not, I wouldn't even say it's necessarily fake it till you make it. I would say it's partially just being delusional, but other people would call it manifestation. Okay. Because you only grow outside of your comfort zone. So if you're learning a new skill, for example, me with confidence, I wasn't confident. I was a complete shell of myself. I wouldn't speak up. I'd just be like in the background and kind of just be like, oh, okay. But this started with, who cares? Like, who actually cares? Because you can go out and go do something and everyone's so involved in their own little bubble. No one actually cares. So it's like, me being confident, it's like, well, why don't you just go do that? And I think it started when I was like single at one point, and I was like, well, why don't you just go up to them? So like, I very much have been a person that I will be like, I will just go up and talk to guys. Like, all my friends will be like, oh, I want that guy's number. And I'll be like, okay, I'll go over there and ask for you because I don't care. But it was just very much like, I was working in a bar with like loads of drunk people. Like, I was a bartender in uni, like in a club. And I was like, I can do whatever I want right now. No one cares and no one's going to remember. And I think that's very much the same, like, in terms of how I actually live my life. Like, if you go in there, I think confidence is the first step to everything. I genuinely believe that is, if you have that confidence and you've built that foundation, then everything else is slightly easier, because then that is the point where you can fake it till you make it. I know my sets perfectly well, like now, but at the beginning, you put that set in front of me with all of these instruments and I'd be like, I have no idea what's going on. Literally no idea. And I'd be there with my surgical technique and the surgeon would ask me a question and I'd go and look for the answer. And you just have to say it with confidence. And it's like, I know it's correct, but at the time I didn't know it in my head. Like, it was on my phone, like I knew it, but I had to write it down. But if I went in there and I was like, oh, I think it's going to be this, but I'm not really sure, what's that going to be like? I can't do that. Like, there's no way. If you say something with confidence, then people will believe you. And that includes yourself. Like, if you say with confidence, say, I'm going to get this job. Like, this job is mine. That's exactly what I did when I applied for this job. I went into that job application, everything. In my head, I already said, this job is mine. I'm just doing the processes involved with it. Like, I am employed already. I do just tell people, like, just be delusional. Like, it's like, if you're something that you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, just do it. Who's stopping you? And I don't like being told no either. If someone, I will not take no for an answer. Like, when I started this job, like, I'm massively into my health and fitness, like, hugely. And everyone was like, you're going to put on weight, like, you're going to drop your schedule, like, you're not going to be able to continue it. This job's so chaotic. I'm still going to the gym 4 times a week. I run twice a week. I've like actually lost weight since starting this job. Like, if you want it bad enough, then don't take no for an answer. Like, that's very much it. Like when I was doing my A levels, they were like, we think you should drop to 2 A levels. Like we don't, like my mental health was so bad, like horrific. And they were like, we don't think you're going to get 3 A levels. Like drop to 2. I got 3 A levels. I made sure I got 3 A levels and I went to uni, and then I got a first and a distinction. And I just don't think someone telling you no, like, is a good enough reason not to do something. Like, that's their life. What impact do they have on you? Like, why are they telling you no?
Do you find that the health and fitness stuff, is that like a side passion? Is that something you think you're gonna follow in the future, or what else do you think is in the future of sales rep, or is it going to be something completely different? Any ideas?
I think fitness has definitely helped keep me sane. Like, if I don't think I have time to be doing anything else at the minute. I think in another life, then maybe I would have gone on to be a PT because I do love it. But at the moment, it's very much just keeping my mental health intact. Like if I don't go to the gym for a week, you can tell I'm not happy. And I'm like, why am I not feeling so good? And it's like, well, have you drank enough water? No. Have you been outside today? Probably not. And have you been to the gym this week? And if all of those are like no, then I need to sort myself out.
I assume your sales skills have gone from 0 to 100 in the job. Like, what ways would you talk to people about developing their sales, and what are your best techniques? How do you sell to so many amazing people around the country?
With medical sales, there's a sales process, but it's not your standard sales process. So I think something I would definitely say is having really good mentors. Like if you are someone who has not been in sales before, and then you are thrust into the sales world, my manager and the CEO of our company, I could sit there and watch them all day. It is like, it's an art, to be honest. I sit there and I listen to conversations that they are having, and I learn so much. It's like the way things are worded. Do you know what I mean? Like you just listen and you're like, that's so clever, the way they're speaking. And it's like things like that you pick up on. And it's being bold enough to ask things as well. Like this is something I'm personally still working on, but being bold enough to ask a surgeon and be like, will you give me a case? It's because there's like the whole point of building up this relationship, which can take like a year, maybe longer. If you don't believe in your product and you don't believe it's a genuinely good product for that patient, that's not something I will sell. I've had surgeons before, which goes against sales. I've had surgeons ask me for what, like a product that we sell. I've asked them about the patient and I'm going, I don't think this product is the right thing for this patient at this time. Like, I just don't think they're going to be a good candidate for this product. And this is somewhere where I have that ethical boundary. I mean, I can't speak for all reps. I can't. Everyone sells in different ways. But for me personally, I will only sell that product if I genuinely believe it's right for the patient.
So if you're going into sales of such like a niche product, do you actually have to learn from people, and are people willing to share their skills with you, or is it a matter of just listening to like those around you and surrounding yourself with the right people to learn from?
I think it's a combination. Like the environment I'm in the company I work in, I'm very, very fortunate. Everyone in the company that I work with is so open to having people shadow them and learn from them. Like it's a really healthy culture that I work in. Everyone's like, if I text one of them and I'd be like, oh, you're doing this surgery, I don't know it that well, can I come with you for the day? Like, would you be able to check with the surgeon? They'd be like, yeah, no worries, that's absolutely fine. Learning's really encouraged. And it's not just go and sit, do an exam and learn this product off by heart. It's very much learning from each other is really encouraged. But I think there's an active element of you have to want to learn. Like you could do this job and sit at those dinners and not really pay attention. Like you could just be in your own little world and be chatting and everything like that. But you need to be actively learning and paying attention from people who are better than you. And it's like, I used to chase perfectionism. Sometimes I still do. Like I'm really hard on myself. Like that's probably why I am where I am, is because I do everything to such a high standards. And I set those standards for myself and I put a lot of pressure on myself. But a lot of it is accepting that you won't be the best at everything. You constantly have to be learning. And that's something with medical sales, is you are constantly learning. You are constantly getting better every single day.
What's then the long-term plan?
So for me personally, the company I work for, I am extremely fortunate with the position I'm in. And staying with this company is a long-term thing for me at the moment. I think coming into this like so young, like I am the youngest rep I've met currently, and I'm 24, but a lot of people do start my age, but obviously they are now like in their 30s and still doing this job. Like it's got quite high retention. People move around, they'll go to like knees, hips, like sports medicine, like they change in other companies. But I think where I am now, like I'm so lucky to have the support around me I do, the mentors I have, like my career progression in my role is so good. I think working in like a growing company is just the best place for me at the moment. And I don't know about what 40 years down the line, because I'll still be working, just in case anytime soon. But yeah, for the moment, like I have no plans to leave. I love my job.
So the last question that we ask all our guests, if you take yourself back to a time, it could be whenever you want, maybe at university, maybe even when you were having the struggles through school, what's one thing you do the same? What's one thing you do differently? And what's one thing you tell yourself to motivate yourself?
So one thing I would do the same is absolutely not taking no for an answer. Like, you tell me no, I'm going to show you I can do it. Like, that is something I would completely do the same. Like, I've been told no a lot for different reasons and different things, or been told, like, given reasons to give up, and I've basically just said no, fuck that, sorry, no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to go show you that I can actually do that. Is definitely something I would do the same. I would keep that attitude. What I would do differently is I would definitely be kinder to myself and other people. Like when I wasn't feeling good, I took it out on myself and I took it out on other people, and that is 100% something I would change. I would do that differently. Is just be kinder to people, even when you're struggling, and definitely yourself. Like, chasing perfectionism all the time is not good for you. And it 100% like takes its toll. One thing I would tell myself to motivate myself, if I could go back to 16-year-old Gemma, when she was like starting this whole mental health journey, whole like GCSEs, A-levels, uni, career, the whole thing, I didn't think I would make it to 21, let alone 24, be doing my dream job. So I would 100% tell myself that like it gets better, and like nothing lasts forever, because everyone is just like, everyone says like uni is the best years of your life, or like school's the best years of your life, and it's not. It doesn't have to be. Your life is whatever you make it to be. And a lot of people hate school, so just like 100% just ignore people that tell you that it's the best years of your life, because it might not be, and that's fine.
I think for anybody who's listening to that you know, maybe in a similar place to where you were, would be listening to that thinking, oh my goodness, like look where she is now. You know, if you hadn't gone into those details with us, like we would never have guessed it, considering what you're doing now and the way you present yourself. So honestly, so impressive, and thank you for sharing those details.
Yeah, no, it makes a difference speaking out. So thank you very much, and hopefully people listening can see what you can achieve. 100%.
You can go stick some screws in some spines.
Okay, so super interesting episode. She filled in a lot of the gaps that we had about the industry. I still don't really understand how cages are needed for knees, but we'll part that one. I'm not sure that's necessarily a takeaway. But to get to the takeaways, why don't you kick off with the first of the takeaways for the episode, Jamie?
When she said this one, it stuck out with me as this is probably going to be the title of this podcast. But her exact quote was, if you want something bad enough, you end up not taking no for an answer. And I think coming from someone who is in sales, that's a really interesting attitude to have, because if you're trying to sell something and someone says no to you and you don't accept it, then obviously you're going to keep pushing to sell it, which can be a dangerous game. But the way she explained it was really interesting, and it actually just showed her resilience and mindset towards everything that she's done in life, even through like the hardships and stuff. Eventually she found this attitude that she wasn't ever going to say no or take no for an answer.
A takeaway like that is that actually saying you can achieve what you want and get things that you want, even if the computer says no answer comes out to start off with. So the second takeaway, which she spoke so passionately and inspirationally about what she's been through when she was younger, and obviously it was great to see someone, you know, persevere through a hardship. But what I enjoyed that she said a lot, and I think we're often very positive mindset about this, but actually she said not to necessarily need to be perfect the whole time. And I think that actually leads to a lot of people's issues, and where she just had I'm going to go and do things, but it doesn't have to be perfect, but doing things is better than nothing. And I took that away from her struggles as well, but also her attitude to her job that's just like, I don't really know sales, but I'm actually not going to be perfect at it, but I'm going to learn from the people around me.
So I like the idea that she said that ultimately she's realized in life, having gone through her struggles, that no one else cares, and having that kind of carefree attitude with the way she's approached what she's doing. She also mentioned, I think the quote was something like, that confidence is her first step in everything, and it's like the foundation of everything she's done. So once she gets to that like point where she can just accept that she's not going to walk into a room, especially when she's walking into a room full of often male surgeons, which might be intimidating to a lot of people, because she goes in with this carefree attitude, with a bit of confidence now that she's learned from her past experiences, she's able to succeed in that environment. Maybe the final takeaway then is something she said about active learning. And she said that actually when she's in these rooms, she could just be sat there and like not really paying attention to people. And if she's going out for dinner with big surgeons and other sales reps, she could just make small talk. But what she does is put herself in these rooms, and she referred to it as active learning from people that are better than her. And to have that self-awareness at that age that, yeah, you're not going to be the most important person in that room. You've chosen quite a niche path and you're having to force your own way in it. The best way to go about it is putting yourself in that room and learning from those around you that have been there and done it, and they are better than you. You just have to accept that and learn from them. A lot of people that have told us about the room and their environment is in terms of opportunities that might arise from it, whereas she was using them purely as a learning opportunity. She isn't going into these rooms to try and get something from other people that they have to physically give her. She's just literally opening her ears to be able to listen to them and get their key takeaways, I guess. Okay, so to summarize then, the first takeaway is if you want something bad enough, you won't take no for an answer. And the second key takeaway is going in with confidence, but accepting that you're not going to be perfect, especially when you're first embarking on that path less chosen. And the third one is that when you're in rooms, be active in your learning from people that are better than you.
Spot on, very well summed up. And in return, I will ask people if they could interact with the podcast, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell people you're working with, and also very happy to take on guest suggestions as well. So that's a new one. We'll ask if anyone's got any suggestions, let us know. Looking forward to the next one.
Nice one. See you next time.